Hello, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters from across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
And that was January.
Yes. Yeah. Where did that go? Blink of an eye.
That's January gone. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're listening on Saturday, this is the last day of January.
Yes. So we're officially heading into February now. So yes, and we'll hopefully start to see how quickly January got off to a flying start, I suppose, with the new car registrations and used car figures eventually when we get sight of them as well.
Yeah, well, definitely. And spoiler alert, we'll have a bit of feedback on the used car market, how the used car market performed in January in terms of trade values and retail activity.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, we've got a bit to get through today because we've got a couple of snippets to include, haven't we?
We have indeed, yes. So during the week, we caught up with Chris Plumb, head of current car valuations at CAP HBI, and he was talking to us about what drove January's trade value movements. We've got the full interview in your podcast feed, and that covers everything from fuel type, car sector, age bands, and indeed CAP HBI's forecast for Q1. And Chris actually went a bit further, didn't he? So he was talking about the first 9 months of the year. So it was really good insights into CAP HBI's current thinking. But we've got an extract at the beginning of this week's pod. But do check out the full interview. It's in your podcast feed. Yeah,
and I also had as we mentioned last week, the pleasure of chairing and hosting the a VRA members meeting down at the Epix offices down in Meriden. We have got a headline coming up from the event in terms of the speakers and the content from those speakers. It was pretty well attended. I think 55 people in person and over a dozen online, which was good. Those that are listening and that did attend, we did have a couple of technical issues that I won't get into, Curtis, where the mutes weren't quite working online.
Yeah,
but it made for quite an amusing morning. So let's just put it that way. But we have got a headline coming up today with some of the content.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that headline because it's all around cybercrime and the implications, certainly for the remarketing sector. And looks like you had some great speakers there too.
We did, yeah. Some fresh speakers that we're not really seen or heard from previously on these kind of things. And also coming up today after the midway break, we've got our automotive digital marketing guru, Ian Godbold, and he's going to be sharing some top tips for Q1. So make sure you stay tuned for that because if one thing from Ian, he never disappoints.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer group bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our supplier special episodes, then get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
Companies already featured on our supplier special series include Prospecting Dynamics, iVendi, ETT, Generational, Jigcar, and CheckVic. You can find them all on your podcast feed. And if you would like us to profile your business, then just get in touch with Philip or myself.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
Headlines this week come from AM, Motor Trade News, Auto Sunday, BBC News, and The Guardian, starting with used car market gathers momentum in January as independent dealers change their advertising preferences, reports Motors and Cazoo. a Vehicle Remarketing Association meeting hears the remarketing sector is under threat from cybercrime. Over 40% of dealership teams are experiencing abusive customer behaviour every week. Then, in the second half, we have some OEM news with Tesla axing 2 model lines as Elon Musk pivots the business towards robotics. BYD is looking to offer customers own brand home chargers via its dealer network, and vehicle production in the UK falls to its lowest level since 1952.
But before we go any further, here's the extract from our chat during the week with CAP HPI's Chris Plumb talking about January trade values. To kick off, as usual, can you talk us through the headline trade value movement for that 3-year 60 point? And obviously, how do they compare with previous Januaries going into February movements?
Yeah, no problem, Phil. So the headline movement at that 3-year 60,000 mile point was actually quite stable through January. We recorded an average movement of 0.2% down, which roughly works out to be about £50 on average. As Curtis was sort of mentioned in the intro, it is a big contrast to the last 3 months of last year, where we saw some big drops of minus 1.1, 1.7 and 1.9 back in November. So the market has definitely steadied from the last quarter, and January has performed relatively well. And if we look at that January to February movement at 0.2% and compare it to we like to do, compare it to that seasonal average, the actual seasonal average is minus 0.2%, so it's bang in line with the seasonality. And it's a bit of a general misconception that values go up from January to February. It's normally February when we see that slight improvement in values, because only I think it's 3 years since 2012 when we introduced Cap Live, we've actually reported on a positive movement. So your January kind of performed exactly how we'd expect it to perform.
Yeah, I mean, that was a question I was going to ask, that, normally everyone has this idea that, you get this slowdown at the end of Q4, people pull back from buying, values soften slightly, and then everyone comes out buying and values start to, rise going into January. But I think predominantly, as you just sort of pointed out there, it's not that always the case, and it does take a little bit more time before you see that strength return.
It does. I think the first couple of weeks in January, you often see the vehicles that are on offer in any volume of the re-entries from the vehicles that didn't sell the back end of the previous year. Once we're through that and the fresh stock starts coming in and the retail market starts to gain momentum through January, that's when we see the market come a little bit more alive. Even though that was, say, 0.2% down, it is slightly worse than what we reported January 2025, which was a 0.1% down. But I think a big difference this year, and the reason it's just saying that the movement's in line with expectation, we've actually, within CAP, we've received, I think it's 10% more data for January this year compared to last year. So actually we're seeing more cars coming through, more volume. It's really good news from especially a wholesale perspective. It means more vehicles are selling, more demand, more appetite from retailers to replenish stock. So more volume, but it hasn't necessarily translated into a bigger movement down. It's very marginal from what we're seeing, and it's been in line with that seasonality.
And Chris, before we look specifically at fuel trends, which I know is always a hot topic when we catch up with you, were there any notable price movements by price bands and age points for the month?
Yeah, most of the movements, all the age and mileage points that we report on, have been fairly negligible, but there's been some nuance within that. So the younger cars or the 1 year, 10,000 mile profile came back slightly more, so 0.3% down, which equates to about £140. Whereas probably the strongest part of the market that we've seen are some of those older vehicles. So 5-year-old stock was flat, no movement on average, even though there will be models that have moved up and down within that. It's actually in the 10-year-old cars that we've seen most movement on, up 0.9%, which equates to about £30. So there seems to be some very strong demand for those price-pointed vehicles. It's interesting when we break down the movements, we don't always report on this, but when we break down the movements by trade price band, it was those vehicles sub £10,000 that really stood out, especially those vehicles between £5,000 to £10,000, which rose between 0.4%, but the vehicles under £5,000 were actually up 0.9%, and particular strength within those petrol and diesel models as well.
So I think, as always with this, that was a small, short snippet from, a reasonably good chat with Chris this month on what happened in January, and as you said earlier, Curtis, what he expects to see as we move sort of into February and March and this first quarter, and a little bit at the end of the interview where he alludes to what he expects to see this year. But I think it was reasonably a positive, optimistic chat with Chris.
Yeah, very much. Steady as she goes in terms of the market. As he said, values down by just 0.2%, and interesting what he was saying about this influx of volume that came into the wholesale sector in January. And what will be fascinating to see is what that means to February, how that translates into February and February's price movement when you do tend to expect prices to come down a bit.
Yeah. So, the podcast, the interview there with Chris is on your podcast feed, wherever you do download it from earlier on in the week. So do have a look at that. Now, talking about the value movements, but looking at the retail marketplace, and this is from the latest Motors and Cazoo market view. And the headline is used car market gathers momentum in January as independent dealers change their advertising preferences. Now, there's always great data in this, isn't there, Curtis?
Yeah, there is, and I did work with the team on this press release. I saw the data, and they did actually unearth some interesting trends over the course of January. Probably the main one is that they saw a 14% increase in the number of cars being listed by independent dealers over the course of the month, and independence. As a sector, because they look at independents, they look at car supermarkets and franchise dealers. But looking at the data specifically on independents, they achieved actually better days to sell than they saw improvements that were better than any other sector. So days to sell for independents averaged 42 days on both their physical and digital forecourts, and that's compared to 52 in December. So a big improvement there for independents. And what they also found was the average price of cars being sold by independents actually increased month on month by 1.4%, which is £192 to £13,902, which resulted in a year-on-year increase of 6.2%. And that those prices tend to be more level than that on a sort of month-on-month basis. And this contrasted with year-on-year drops for both franchise dealers, which were down 1.5%, and car supermarkets, which were down 1.2%. And also within this data set, older profile cars, which tend to be the sort of that very much the stock in trade for independent dealers. So older profile cars aged over 5 and 10 years saw the biggest year-on-year improvements, up by 4.7% for those over 5-year-old cars to £13,731, and up 8.8% to £7,375 for those older cars over 10 years old. So some notable developments there for independent dealers, and some pretty positive news for them in January.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a nice little quote that kind of sums it all up from on the latest market view data from Lucy Tugby, who's the marketing director there at Motors and Cazoo, saying that the seasonal trends were clearly in evidence in January, with the market gathering momentum as buyers returned to the market following December's festivities. The standout trend for the month was the strength shown by independent sector, As a business, they recorded a 14% year-on-year increase in the number of cars being advertised by independent dealers on Motors Marketplace. They believe that this is a result of the disgruntled retailers choosing to cast their net wider than their usual platform and advertise with them, and that they saw a record level of traffic and leads to the Cazoo website and app, and helping to deliver strong volumes of leads to dealers across all car retailing sector. So a nice little summary there from Lucy on the market in January.
Now, moving over to the next headline, which is from Motor Trade News, and its remarketing sector under threat from cybercrime, VRA meeting his. So this is the Vehicle Remarketing Association members meeting that was held during the week, and first one of the year, which I know you chaired, Phil. And the meeting covered remarketing and crime, including trends in vehicle theft, ghost number plates, and clocking. And I think last week when we were talking about it, you also mentioned bubble plates.
Did you look it up?
Which I still haven't Googled. So, as we said at the top of the show, you had some good speakers here, including Mark Rodbert, who's the CEO at IDAX Software, and one of the points he was making, which interested me, was that this sort of high turnover of staff in environments such as dealerships makes it challenging to create a cybersecurity awareness culture, while the large amount of financial information gathered about customers for motor finance made businesses attractive targets. So some interesting insights there, Phil.
Yeah, it was fascinating, and it was great to have a slightly different lineup of content and speakers than we've done previously at the VRA members meeting, and we changed, and that cyber security marketplace, particularly on the back of what happened at JLR, which obviously everybody's aware of, and Mark did speak about some of that. There was only so much he could share, obviously, but it was very clearly that it was how exposed is the automotive sector. Is it it's not just the OEMs. We know that others, people such as Arnold Clark's, had a few issues, and others. So he was kind of trying to share that this is not just for the big organizations. This goes right through, and some of the ways that they do it, the rationale that they do it, and really trying to get the members and to look at their businesses and make sure that they've got the processes in place, that they understand where some of these attacks start from, and why they should be vigilant, and some of the things that they need to be aware of, particularly with the onset of things like AI tools and usages that's coming in. So no, it was a fascinating overview and insight there from Mark. And as you say, we had Jepson's there talking about the changes to the number plates, and that plays in a little bit because of obviously false plates being used, or ghost plates being used for theft and vehicle theft and things like this. So that we had the guys there from Tracker talking about what they're seeing in their marketplace. So all in all, it was a great day, very informative. Gave us a lot to think about. Steve Whitaker, who's the police liaison manager there at Tracker Network, is also an ex-police officer. So he was very informative and very open and real on the way the police look at vehicle theft and some of the challenges with that. So no, it was a fantastic meeting and first of the year. And we had Chris Plumb there as well, as you gave a brief market overview of the used car market, as we just heard earlier from him.
Yeah, and definitely worth checking out Motor Trade News's coverage of the meeting, because it's very detailed, and there's some great comments from some of your speakers there, Phil. So do check out the full story.
And heading over to AM Online, and this is a story from a poll that they did themselves through their platform to the market, and this is the over 40% of dealership teams experiencing abuse customers every week. So this is a fascinating view of what's happening at that dealership level with with customers and their attitude towards staff within the dealerships.
Yeah, it does make for depressing reading. I mean, AM have actually done a really good job with this. So, as you say, it's their own poll, and of the respondents that they had, 41% said abuse occurs at least once a week, while a further 24% experience it at least once per month, and only 14% said that it hardly ever happens, with 21% reporting incidents a few times a year. So there is a, as I say, a depressing trend that they've highlighted here, and the findings point to a persistent issue for dealers, managing customer-facing teams, including areas like online reviews, manufacturer targets, and customer satisfaction metrics, because it does go on to say that as well as the abuse in the showroom, they are on the receiving end of a fair bit of online abuse in some of the reviews, some of the feedback that customers are posting about their showroom experiences, even when, as this story points out, it's nothing to do with the showroom experience. It could be that they've decided they no longer like the brand of the car that they've bought, which isn't really the dealer's fault.
No, and that's it. And there's a couple of comments in the story from dealers that they polled. And the first one is saying that customers do generally believe jumping up and down, threatening bad reviews will get them the desired results. And with the pressures from manufacturing partners, they are normally right. So that's obviously, I think and as you say, they take to the keyboard warriors, and sometimes that, it's all about they just made the wrong choice of vehicle, didn't they?
Yeah. And what one respondent said, CSI is no longer used to comment on the level of service received from a dealer, but a platform to complain about backorder parts and disappointing reliability expectations from their chosen brand. It is no longer a useful measurement for its original purpose.
Yeah, so just to conclude, saying that the poll results suggest abusive behaviour is becoming a routine operational challenge for many retailers, raising questions over staff well-being, the effectiveness of customer feedback systems, and how dealers can fairly manage digital reputation in an increasing hostile environment.
Well, you know what, Phil, I think we need to be more upbeat now, and we've got just the man to deliver some upbeat messages, because next up is Ian Godbold with his latest top tip.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors and Cazoo. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media. Next up is car retailing industry guru Ian Godbold, sharing his top tips on how to steer your business to success.
Hello everyone, and here we are, the last day of January, and my first hot tip of the year. As expected, we saw the Boxing Day bounce with increased website traffic and lead volumes flowing into dealerships. That momentum has carried through January, with dealers reporting strong used car sales and healthy inquiry levels. The challenge, as always in this type of market, is sourcing the stock at the right prices whilst maintaining or even increasing margin. Because of that, it's absolutely vital to focus on your sources of stock, particularly through We Want Your Car. Many of you already run this monthly, but at this time of year it becomes critical. Re-engage with your database through email, SMS or WhatsApp where available, and make sure the message is consistent across all communications and highly visible on your website. Do not forget the service department either. What is coming through that workshop? Is there an opportunity to purchase that vehicle or move that customer into another car? Franchise dealers will now be firmly focused on that March plate change month. Many will always be running events or planning them over the coming weeks. The booking platforms many of you may use make it easy for customers to secure appointments via email or SMS, while also allowing sales teams to follow up by telephone. Make sure your prospect evenings are in place. Keep them engaging. Bring in food, drinks, add an element of fun with simple incentives, such as the first salesperson to secure 10 appointments and of course the most appointments on the night. This discipline is critical to delivering your Q1 objectives. Q1 is a fantastic time in the automotive business because it's so busy. However, when volumes are high, lead leakage can creep in. This is where leads are not followed up effectively or consistently due to the sheer workload. General managers and sales managers must be rigorous with their CRM oversight. Has every lead received at least 3 or 4 contact attempts? Have outbound calls been made? Where exactly is each inquiry in the process? Strong control here prevents leads from being lost too early, and maximising conversion will increase your return on investment. So there you go, the first tip of the year. Have a brilliant time in the marketplace, finish January strong, get off to a fast start in February, and I'll see you all again very soon.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, he certainly delivered, didn't he? I mean, I feel more upbeat already, and a lot to unpick from that one. So, as he says, Q1 is such a key time period over the course of the year, and so some notable observations he made there about lead leakage. When things do start to get a bit busy in the showroom and leads start to get missed.
I think that's the thing, really, that sometimes, and I can only talk for myself, and it's a while ago, obviously, a few decades or so ago, that when it's busy, you kind of lapse on some of the basic things. And when it is busy and people are out in the market and upbeat and buying, that's the time that you really need to capture everybody. Because that's it is a case of that, when they are in the market, you need to maximize and make sure you don't lose those leads, that you take every opportunity. And to Ian's point, Q1 is such a crucial quarter for the retailers and the manufacturers, because it just sets the scene for the rest of the year. So, everything Ian's saying there is absolutely 100% right, that, now's the time to really go the extra mile, capture every inquiry, take every opportunity and monitor every sort of KPI, every performance you can, because Q1 really can make or break your financial year for a lot of the marketplace.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to get in touch with Ian, then do direct message him on LinkedIn or email him at iangodbold@igcdigital.co.uk.
And moving back to the headlines now, we're going over to The Guardian, and Tesla never disappoints, does he?
It doesn't, no.
In one way or the other. He also gives us regular content, but
every week we could run a Tesla story.
we could,
easily.
Yeah. We have to be very selective, though, on some.
And this was too big a story to miss, really.
Yeah, and with this one, I mean, this is obviously, we saw what Tesla did over recent years with the model lineup and supply of his product. But this is that Tesla discontinues Model X and Model S vehicles as Elon Musk pivots to robotics, and saying that high hopes for the Optimus robot help company beat forecasts despite yearly revenue decline and flailing car business. So really getting to the crux of it there, that he's now down to 2 models is it left?
So this is the discontinuation of the Model X SUV, Model S full-size sedan, which, as you say, will just leave the Model 3, the saloon, and Model Y, sort of mid-size SUV. So not an awful lot for Tesla dealers to sell. I can understand some of the logic behind it, because the Model S, Model X, not huge sellers. But what's next in the product pipeline, and is Tesla's attention shifting away from being a car maker to being a robotics maker?
Yeah, and that's the thing now. He does spend a lot of time, and I think everyone's talked about obviously Tesla in terms of that the bigger picture with Tesla and what they do, but the story does go into the detail that his most recent quarterly earnings reported showed a slump in vehicle sales and declining revenue. And obviously, he's putting his future in AI and robotics, and that the earnings report described Tesla's chaotic year as transition from a hardware-centric business to a physical AI company, and the high hopes and grand possibilities Musk has outlined helped Tesla beat Wall Street's expectations, even as the company reported first ever decline in total revenue, losing 3% year over year, and that Tesla reported a fourth quarter earnings share of $0.50 after the market closed on Wednesday night of this week, exceeding the $0.45 that Wall Street expected. So, but within that, there is some big numbers that it reported. A revenue was $24.9 billion, and that was obviously beating the estimates of $24.7 billion. So I think as a company, they're doing quite well, but as a car manufacturer, not so good.
Yeah, definitely. And it looks though all the eggs are going to be put in the Optimus basket. So these robots that go into production sometime this year, and that is going to be the main focus. And it looks so that's going to be the main focus. And in terms of Tesla cars, probably more of a focus on automotive or autonomous vehicles. So as we sit here recording this today, we've absolutely no idea what's in the Tesla EV product pipeline, and there may not be anything. And the market share that it had built and developed over recent years is going to be lost to the emergent EV brands.
Yeah, for definite. And linking into the emerging EV brands, and we're heading over to Auto Sunday. Our friend Tristan there at Auto Sunday, that BYD to offer own brand home chargers via their retail network, saying that BYD is working on a deal to offer EV buyers home charger when they buy one of its cars. While other car brands offer a charger with new electric vehicles, few manufacturers produce the charge points themselves. I mean, this is really demonstrating that sort of in-house capabilities of BYD, their lack of reliance on third-party supply of any of their products, apart from obviously rubber and glass that we've talked about previously on the podcast. Yeah. But even now, bringing chargers into their own ecosystem is a phenomenal move by BYD.
Yeah, and as you say, it's a good story from Tristan Young at Auto Sunday, and it looks as though Tristan probably sat down with the BYD country manager, Bono Gee, at a recent press launch for the Sea Lion 5. Great name for a car, the Sea Lion 5.
Yes.
But Bono Gee said the company was currently working on this project and talking to charge point installers, and also adding that the launch of a home charger bundle with a new car was only 2 or 3 months away. So this could happen quickly. And also, interestingly, in a move that mimics Tesla, Gee also revealed that BYD plans to install its own network of 300 flash charging points across the UK, and that's by the end of this year, and includes the possibility that some will be at some of its retailer sites. So BYD, again, a brand that we cover on a regular basis because they've got so much to say at the moment, haven't they?
They have, and I mean, we're talking about UK investment, and we're talking about UK productivity next, but really this is clearly demonstrating that the Chinese manufacturers are willing to invest. That sort of growth and that investment is clearly on the strategy for these manufacturers. And as you say, installation of a charging network would change the landscape of both UK EV adoption, but actually demonstrate China's appetite and ambition to enter the marketplace and support the markets as well.
Yeah, and these bundles that OEMs are promoting and the sort of partnerships they're going into, it is a trend that we're seeing. And only last weekend in the Sunday Times, there was a report on Volvo, and it just mentioned in passing that in Sweden, Volvo has partnered with a leasing company and an energy provider to support EV sales, and that the second market that will introduce this and roll it out will be the UK. So that's definitely one to look out for.
Yeah, and finally, we just hinted there about the production figures being out this week for the UK, and it's been covered in both Just Auto and the BBC. And this is that vehicle production in the UK falls to a 73-year low, and that the British car, van, truck, and bus production fell to its lowest level since 1952 last year, according to the SMMT. And that Mike Hawes, who's the chief executive there at the SMMT, saying that the toughest year in a generation, with output by a major cyber attack at JLR, the closure of the Vauxhall plant down there in Luton, and deep uncertainty over US trade policy, obviously all led to this significant reduction in UK production.
Yes. Now there is a slight ray of sunshine in this story, because Theo Leggett goes on to say that the situation is expected to improve this year with the introduction of new electric models, and the SMMT believes production of cars and vans could exceed 1 million units by 2027. But as you've outlined, last year was pretty horrific for UK car and light commercial production. So overall, just over 764,000 vehicles were built in 2025, which was 15.5% fewer than the previous year, 2024. The vast majority were cars, with 717,000 units built, but that was actually 60,000 fewer units than the previous year. And by comparison, as recently as 2016, the UK produced 1.7 million cars. So it shows the rate of the shortfall there.
It does, yeah. And put this in context, and I think the figures are yet to be published, but 2025 for global production is going to be around that 93 million mark, and the indications coming out that China will be close to 33 million of that 93 million. So just over a third of the global vehicle production is out of China, which supports all the other stories we've been covering over the podcasts around the new entrants entering the UK and other marketplaces, their ambition for growth and ambition for market share, when China is producing so many vehicles in what could be classed as a challenging domestic marketplace over there in China. So lots of cars to go elsewhere.
Yes, yeah. That is the key point, isn't it? Because their car production is immense, but as you say, the domestic market has slowed down. So those cars have got to go somewhere. So we'll be seeing a lot of them on UK roads, where we are already, aren't we?
We are, yeah, a lot more to come yet. But hopefully we've covered quite a bit this week. As we said, please do have a listen to the full interview there with Chris Plumb at CAP HPI. Very detailed deep dive into their most recent editorial. And there was a webinar this week which gave an opportunity for Q&As at the end of it. So if you didn't get to join on that, I think if you reach out to Chris or one of the team there at CAP HPI, they will probably share you the link for that. And as always, always upbeat, always fantastic, short, sharp tips there coming from Ian Godbold. And if you do need help or you do need some advice, maybe you just want a 5-minute chat with Ian because you're feeling a bit down and gloomy, then reach out to Ian. He'll always be there to help you, always be upbeat, and always give you some fantastic advice. So don't miss that opportunity catching up with Ian if you can.
But that's all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines in our newsletter on Monday morning. To subscribe, just search LinkedIn for the Motor Trade Radio podcast.